A sweeping diplomatic storm is brewing. Trump and Putin preparing to meet in days. Zelensky looks sidelined, and world leaders are circling with anxiety, alliances, and strategic cards at stake. It began as a sudden tremor felt across the global stage. President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin are set to meet in the coming days, a development confirmed by senior Kremlin officials. The first one between a U.S. president and Putin in several years, the summit has stirred a maelstrom of diplomatic energy. Mid-talk that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky might be kept out of the initial meetings, with Europe now scrambling to ensure its voice is heard. Though details remain murky, mounting signals indicate this summit. It could occur as soon as next week. The United Arab Emirates has been floated as a possible venue, though no firm location has been confirmed. The rapid timeline reflects mounting urgency. President Trump has set a Friday deadline. Unless Russia agrees to a ceasefire, he has threatened sweeping secondary sanctions targeting oil trade partners. He's already initiated hefty tariffs on Indian oil imports and is eyeing similar measures for China. Just days earlier, Trump envoy Steve Witkoff's highly productive. Discussions with Putin in Moscow seem to open a window for rapprochement, though skepticism lingers about whether Russian overtures will translate into lasting peace. Putin, meanwhile, has reportedly proposed limited truce measures, like pausing missile and drone strikes, but European and Ukrainian officials warn such gestures could merely obscure Moscow's continued military ambitions. As this drama unfolds, global leaders are reacting, some in solidarity with Ukraine, others urging steady diplomacy, and a few watching from the sidelines with uneasy curiosity. Across Europe, the response has been swift and unified. French President Emmanuel Macron reiterated that Russia is the aggressor and Ukraine deserves unwavering support. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz reaffirmed Germany and Europe's steadfast alliance with Kiev. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer reiterated the UK unwavering backing for Ukrainian sovereignty. Canada's Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, expressed continued commitment to Ukraine's democratic struggle, framing it as one that matters to the entire free world. Swedish and Finnish counterparts echoed the message. Peace is welcome, but only with Ukraine fully involved. Meanwhile, embattled leaders from countries like Hungary broke ranks. Prime Minister Viktor Orbán commended Trump's bold stand for peace, while others, like Bulgaria's President Radev, dismissed Ukraine's position as futile. Yet, in Central Europe, voices like Czech President Petr Pavel called on Europe to step up militarily and diplomatically, warning that ceding the narrative risks a strategic unraveling. Beyond Europe, the Weimar Plus group, comprising leaders from France, Germany, Poland, the UK, Italy, Spain, and the European Commission, held a rapid summit in Paris, declaring that without European involvement, there can be no just, comprehensive, or sustainable peace in Ukraine. The declaration underscored that Ukraine must be at the table, and Europe must play a strategic, not subordinate, role. In Latin America, Brazilian President Lula da Silva lamented the Oval Office confrontation that struck Zelensky as humiliating, describing it as a grotesque display that tarnished diplomatic norms. In the Pacific, Australia's Prime Minister reaffirmed long-standing support for Ukraine, framing the conflict as a struggle between democracy and authoritarianism. Zelensky himself issued a defiant riposte. Ukraine is not afraid, he declared, reiterating that any negotiators must include Europe and that allowing Ukraine to be sidelined would invite a bad peace. He has also signaled openness to meeting with Putin, potentially mediated by Trump or Turkish President Erdogan, though the Kremlin has so far rebuffed such proposals. Meanwhile, European initiatives are accelerating. The Coalition of the Willing, launched under the joint leadership of Prime Minister Starmer and President Macron, has taken shape. An ensemble of European, Commonwealth, and NATO members coordinating security, guarantees, and diplomatic weight behind Ukraine. Military chiefs from around 30 nations, including Japan, recently convened in Paris to explore formation of an international reassurance force to deter any return to aggression. The summit diplomacy intensifies at a moment when battlefield realities remain grim, civilians continue to suffer under shelling and drone strikes, and the human toll mounts daily. The possibility of a Trump Putin meeting, or even a later trilateral summit with Zelensky, may offer a diplomatic sliver, but only if backed by real commitments and inclusive frameworks. In effect, the world stands at a crossroads. Will this meeting usher in a fortified peace, with Ukraine and Europe firmly at the table, or will it become a pivot away from Western unity, inadvertently entrenching Russia's gains under the guise of negotiation? With secondary sanctions looming, alliances reconfiguring, and Ukraine left to brace for what's next, the stakes could not be higher. As capitals around the world brace and recalibrate, one thing is clear: this won't be a normal summit. The reverberations will ripple across continents, reshaping the geopolitical landscape long after leaders depart the negotiation table. From Kiev to Canberra, world leaders are scrambling to articulate their position. French President Emmanuel Macron reaffirmed unwavering support for Ukraine's sovereignty. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz echoed that Europe must remain a central player, and British Prime Minister Keir Starmer insisted that no peace is just if Ukraine is on the sidelines. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau invoked democratic values, while Australian leaders painted the conflict as a global struggle between freedom and authoritarianism. In contrast, Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orbán praised Trump's boldness, and Bulgaria's President Radev criticized Ukraine's stance as unrealistic. Meanwhile, Czech President Petr Pavel and other Central European leaders warned of strategic erosion if Kiev continues to be excluded. At the heart of Europe, the Weimar Plus group, including France, Germany, Poland, the UK, Italy, Spain, and the European Commission, convened urgently in Paris. Their collective declaration was clear: Europe must not be sidelined in negotiations that determine the future of the continent. They reaffirmed that there can be no peace in Ukraine without Ukraine, and no peace for Europe without Europe. President Zelensky, undeterred, responded forcefully. Ukraine is not afraid, he declared. He urged for inclusion in any summit, ideally mediated by Trump or Turkey's President Erdogan, but reaffirmed his readiness to meet Putin only under genuine, transparent terms. Beyond politics, battlefield tensions continue to escalate. Russian strikes have claimed civilian lives amid ongoing missile and drone attacks, while Ukrainian defenses remain steadfast. Civilians anxiously anticipate whether this summit might usher in a genuine ceasefire or simply reset diplomatic optics. The coalition of the willing, spearheaded by European leaders, is accelerating security guarantees for Ukraine, military, financial, and strategic. 30 military chiefs, including from Japan and NATO allies, are exploring the creation of an international reassurance force to deter renewed aggression. As nation-states realign and sanctions loom, the world watches. Will this bilateral Trump Putin meeting birth a fragile ceasefire, or unravel hard, one unity by excluding the very country at the center.